Welcome to The Wire. I'm Seema Chishti. It's a pleasure to be in conversation with Professor Aditya Mukherjee. Aditya is a teacher, he's an eminent historian, a public intellectual, a scholar, and a man of many words, many thoughts, many facts, and a brave person. He's never hesitated to speak up about modern India as he deems fit and made his case. And his latest is his book, Nehru's India, Past, Present and Future. And we're here primarily to discuss this book. Thank you, Aditya, for agreeing to come to the Wire office.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I want to start with a very simple question. Why did you write this book?
This was originally written as the presidential address to the Indian History Congress. I was the general president last year. And in fact, to share a secret with you, it was Professor Irfan Habib's suggestion that ask Aditya to write on Nehru, given the times. And I think he was right, because this is not my expertise. I mean, I'm an economic historian. I have not researched Nehru, in a manner that a Nehru scholar should. But it did strike a bell that given the conditions in India at that time, even today, it looked a little better after June 24, but we are going back to when I wrote the book last year. Given those conditions, one felt that one has to come back, look back at those who built what is modern India, which we are now in the process of dismantling. So, and who better than Nehru, after the freedom struggle, if there is anybody, and since Gandhiji passed away within a year, not passed away, he was murdered within a year, Nehru was the towering figure who represented our entire freedom struggle.
So Aditya, I mean, we can revisit this theme later as well, but I want to ask you at the very outset that a lot of us and a lot of people, historians included, are defensive about Nehru. We seem to be protecting him. Do Nehruvian ideas need our defense? Are we doing his detractors a favor by adopting a defensive posture? Is there any other way to do this?
Yeah, I'm absolutely amazed. I mean, Nehru needs no defending. He's been critiqued wrongly. And where he has been critiqued wrongly, one points out the thing, as I have done in the book. I mean, he's critiqued wrongly for his understanding of Marxism. He's been critiqued wrongly for his understanding of Gandhiji. He's supposed to have just followed him, without thinking, etc. He's critiqued for the economic policy that he created. I mean, the entire sort of neoliberal world today thinks that had Nehru not been there, we would have been the United States of America. I mean, so it's crazy. So there you critique them. You don't have to defend Nehru,
Aditya, the most striking thing about your book, and I think it's the jewel in the book, is your whole framing of modern India as a mosaic which pieces up sovereignty, his pro-poor approach, questions of economy, secularism, his ideas of sovereignty about the Indian nation as it was emerging, a poor country, which did not kind of claim to, muscle because it has the third largest GDP, etc. Yet it commanded such a big, place on the world stage. What are all these pieces that make up modern India, which Nehru is clearly the principal and chief architect of?
You see, all these pieces emerge out of our national movement, or our national revolution, as we would like to call it. It's about 100 years it took 100 years to create this mosaic, and a unique mosaic in the world, in world history. I want to just emphasize that.
Please.
When nation states emerged in the world, they emerged from about the 17th century onwards in Europe. And each nation state was one language, one religion. It was Catholic France, not even Christian, Catholic France, Protestant England, unification of Germany on the basis of language, unification of Italy on the basis of one language. France was a multilingual country, and the French Revolution just, demolished it and made it into a one language country. You see, in that atmosphere, for our nationalists to imagine a nation which will celebrate diversity, the British said India can never be a nation. They called us a geographical expression. How can India be a nation with so many religions, languages, etc.?
And a whole lot of American scholars also spoke about the Balkanization.
That's right.
Had his thesis.
Precisely. They said that it cannot be. But that is the genius of, I think, our national movement. So they, A, imagined it as inclusive, celebrating diversity, B, as pro-poor, from the early nationalists onwards. If you look at Dadabhai Naoroji's first book, poverty and un-British rule in India. R.C. Dutt's book. Pick up anybody in the 19th century. Why are they fighting the British? Because British imperialism created poverty. So poverty is at the heart of it. Secularism at the heart of it. Democracy. Tilak in 1890s is talking of adult franchise. When the world hasn't even
woken up to
it. They're decades later still talking of women's right to vote. And in the 1960s, in the United States, you are still having civil rights movements for the black to sit next to you, leave alone vote, So in that context, from the beginning, so this imagination is what Tagore called the idea of India. And as you correctly said, Nehru quintessentially represented it and fought for it. And that is why Gandhiji chose him as his successor.
Yeah, and he very clearly sort of anointed him, as it were, and he followed through. So Nehru did not really agree with all of Gandhi's ideas, but the way he straddles his points of agreement and disagreement and goes on after, as you said, that Gandhi being assassinated months into the independence. What do you make of his transition from a leader of a revolutionary program, the national movement, to being the builder of a nation and being builder of a country? Very few leaders, in my view, have made that transition in a democratic way.
You asked actually two questions. The first is the Gandhi and Nehru thing. He was a critic. And if you read his autobiography written in the 1930s, almost the whole book is a critique of Gandhi. And by the 1940s, Nehru evolves. You see, he's writing the autobiography when he, in our opinion, was enveloped in what is called Stalin Marxism, a very orthodox kind of Marxism. He said, but it has to be revolution, it has to be force, it has to be, a lot of people have to die kind of thing, speeches he was making at that time. But then he shifts from that position, from a Stalin Marxist position to what I will call a Gramscian position.
What year is this roughly?
This is late 30s.
And what are the events you think that contribute?
Essentially, the Stalin. What happened? He was a very close observer of what is happening in the world. Rise of fascism and how Marxism got distorted under Stalin. So he was warned of both of these, and from then on, for him, democracy becomes the central issue. He coins these phrases. He says, there is no socialism without democracy. Now he is saying that about 50 years or more earlier, that it proved to be true. Socialism crumbled because of absence of democracy in many parts of the world. He says socialism must be socialism of 90%. It cannot be the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now the entire Euro-communist movement adopted this. The dictatorship of the proletariat word has gone out of Marxist understanding now. But Nehru anticipated it. And that is why Irfan Habib says that his books, the glimpses, the discovery of India, etc., his prison writings are comparable in size and content to Gramsci's prison notebooks.
Which is a great tribute coming from
Absolutely.
Professor Irfan Habib.
Absolutely.
Who knows his marks, who respects his marks.
Right, and who was a critic of Nehru as well.
Yes.
So it grows on you. As you read Nehru, it grows on you. Remarkable man.
So the second question that I asked about the transition that you answered, that he himself learned from what was happening. In this learning, what role did Nehru's privilege play, and what role did his charisma play, as we try and understand and unpack Nehru? I mean, I think he put everything to very good effect. He uses privilege well. He deploys it. He's conscious of it. And he also is conscious of his charisma, his personality, which enables Nehruvian ideas to develop wheels and pace.
I think he underplayed both, his privilege and the charisma. The privilege he thought was something he had to fight against. I mean, he gets educated in England most of his life. He has to write the discovery of India to discover India. So, and he discovers it in a manner which is unimaginable. As a historian, as I said the other day also, that today there is no history of India from, let's say, Mohenjo-daro till today, till the 1940s when he wrote it, in such a grand sweep, which is analytical, which understands what are the civilizational values of India, why democracy is a possibility in India, the dialogical tradition in ancient past. Amartya Sen has written chapters after chapters on this, essentially expanding on what Nehru is saying in the 1940s. In his two books, Idea of Justice and Argumentative Indian, Amartya Sen is making the same point. The reason why democracy could take root in India, he says, because from ancient past onwards, we had a dialogical tradition, a tradition of living with difference, of negotiating difference and bringing in something superior, etc. Now, that is the approach that Nehru adopts, and that is how he understands the Rig Veda, the Upanishads, Buddhism, Jainism, Guru Nanak, Akbar, grand sweep, and with a continuity that he brings out in Indian history,
Yeah. So Nehru is also like a very courageous man, Aditya, and you do talk about that. His ability to actually, it wasn't easy at that time to stop communal riots or even to talk about it, because it was a very difficult time. You're having kind of people who are singed by, communalism coming by, losing everything. You have millions of refugees coming in, and he's a popular leader. He needs to win elections too. So what prompted that courage where apparently he takes Motilal Nehru's gun and he tears through an angry crowd near Jamia, I think, to protect people, to protect minorities. His travels and his comments in Nawakhali, which along with Gandhi, of course Gandhi spent much more time there, but he was there too, standing by that. So what prompted this what gave this courage at a time when it need not have been a popular issue?
In fact, courage is shown only when you can stand up against what is popular. I mean, if racism is popular and you fight against it, you show courage. And communalism, as you correctly said, at that point of time was at its peak. And Nehru, you very rightly, he would jump into crowds and you said that you have to first kill me before any Hindu strikes a Muslim, or vice versa. It takes enormous courage, and there is no doubt about it that he was a man of great courage. But he did not believe that it was his charisma which is taking him forward. He really believed that it is the civilizational values of India which have permeated into the ordinary people, and his contact with ordinary people. From the 20s, he discovers himself when he starts going into UP villages and organizing the peasants. You see, Nehru is, this picture of Nehru, the elite, smoking and, English speaking, is so unfair. The amount of time that Nehru has spent not only in Parliament, but among the people is legendary, absolutely. From the 20s, he would always be among the people. And he drew inspiration from that, not from his charisma. The charisma is an end product.
Yeah, or a part of his natural sort of personality. It's a personality trait.
Charisma emerges because of what you do. You see, for example, to say
handsome is as handsome does, as they say.
Gandhiji, to say that Gandhiji had charisma. Gandhiji fainted the first time he got up, in court to argue a case, because he was a nervous man, But the charisma emerges as you go deep into a movement, and it is the movement which gives the charisma to the leaders.
So it's a dumb question, but it must be asked. Why does the Hindutva right dislike Nehru so much? We're in the 60th year of his death. He's still held responsible for maybe a manhole cover missing, the strangest and oddest of things, and they do it in all seriousness, to invoke Nehru, and their inability to appropriate him. They try to appropriate all manner of leaders, congressmen, Congress presidents. Gandhi is their dream appropriation exercise. His symbols are being broken up and pieced up. Why not Nehru? Why does Nehru annoy them so much?
Two reasons. One, of course, Nehru understood communalism better than anybody else. He was the first in the world to analyze what is communalism. After that, there are many other scholars who have done this very well, but he was the first. That is number one. Secondly, he took away the cherry from them. During the partition riots and with Gandhiji's murder, a communal situation had been created where the temperatures had gone very high, 500,000 killed, 6 million refugees, and the temperature was such that they believed now is the time to create a Hindu Rashtra as a mirror image of Muslim Pakistan. That was the goal, and Nehru saw it. He says that the assassination of the Mahatma is not just one individual. There is a group behind it, he means the RSS, who is trying to assassinate many other people and create a disorder and do a coup. Which will, that's right, he uses the phrase, they do a coup which will change the nature of the state. That is, make it into a Hindu Rashtra. Nehru doesn't let that happen. The opposite happens.
Bust the plot.
Completely bust their plot. At the first election, the Hindutva forces were demolished. The entire Hindu Ram Rajya Parishad, not Jansangh, but Hindu Mahasabha, etc. They've got only 6% of the votes and 10 seats, despite the communal temperature.
So, in a lot of ways, Nehru fights the 1952 elections as a referendum on the idea of India, and he wins it lock, stock and barrel. Why did he do that? Wasn't that like a very high-risk move?
If it was not done, then the whole 100-year-old freedom struggle would have been a waste. Because the vision of the freedom struggle was a secular democratic India. And if at birth you kill the child, then what kind of leader are you? So that is why Gandhiji, risked his life. Gandhiji spent 4 months in Noakhali from November 1946 till March, February, March. When the transfer of power is happening. Probably the world's biggest event of the 20th century, because colonialism collapses after the British are thrown out of India. And the leader of that movement is not there in the discussions of transfer of power. When he's asked Gandhiji, when will you come back? Because he's needed. He says, how long will you be there? He says, as long as it takes. And he stayed there for 4 months. He said, what use is this India? If the soul of the country has been killed. Now, what is the soul for him? The soul is Hindu-Muslim unity. If the people are not united, if they're killing each other, then what kind of freedom is it?
Aditya, you've referred to that, about the criticism of Nehru. We discussed the kind of economic critique. But the portions where you speak of where Nehru is critiqued for his understanding of Muslim communalism, perhaps giving Muslims a gate pass, giving them a quarter, a leg up when he shouldn't have done that, and you tackle it. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, this whole business of what they call tushtikaran, appeasement
yes.
of the minority. Now, again, it's not Nehru himself. Nehru, as I said, always projected the values of the freedom struggle better and wider. But this was what the national movement was. In the 19th century itself, when the Indian National Congress was formed, a decision was taken. Let's say there are 100 members and only 6 of them are Muslims. A decision was taken that if 4 out of 6 Muslims oppose a particular resolution, we will not take it. Now, if you go by just democracy by numbers, you will say this is ridiculous. Why?
It does involve an element of democracy there as well, 4 out of 6. So there is some number count.
But within a group. Because the whole idea of the national movement was to take everybody on together, consensus. It was not
a brute majority.
Majoritarian democracy is not what was in their mind. You see, the democracy is not just a majority. Otherwise, India would be called a democracy. Why are we called an electoral autocracy now? Why aren't we called a democracy? After all, the party has won, handsomely. So it's not a question of that. So Nehru imbibes that value, and he says that the way to fight communalism, Muslim communalism, minority fears, minorities in all places have fears, is to assuage them, help them out, be the big brother, especially when in fact you are. The Muslims were the backward community in India in every respect.
Post-partition for sure. Yeah.
No, even before that, except in certain pockets. That's certain pockets. You see, the Muslim elite is only UP.
Bengal.
Elite?
No.
There would be the Nawab, but the bulk of the Muslims in Bengal were the peasants. In large parts of the country, it's the peasants and the artisans, the lower classes who had converted to Islam, So they were on the whole badly off, except, as I said, the picture we have of these Nawabs and Harons and whatnot, but that is not what. So he says that we have to, give a leg up to the community, and then this fear will disappear. So there is absolutely nothing wrong in this. This is how the entire civilized world behaves, which is give a leg up to the those who are deprived. Now,
substantive equality.
Yeah, if again one would say that why are you giving a reservation to the Dalit? It's not democratic. It's not. You're not going by merit. You're not because you have to give a leg up. That is what democracy is about. To carry people along.
So Nehru also there's a time when he's violently opposed to linguistic states, but then he comes around. There is this aspect of Nehru also where somebody has so much power, authority, but is able to come around. He can argue his point, and then he accepts that that was not okay. This is okay. A bit about that.
I'll slightly modify what you are saying. You see, the whole idea of linguistic states comes from the Congress. The British.
And Motilal Nehru's report is
even before that. You see, the British divided India into provinces. It's a Madras presidency, Bombay presidency. Bombay presidency will have had Gujarat, Maharashtra, etc. Madras presidency had all of South India. So it was Gandhiji when he came into the Congress and reorganized the Congress in the 1920s. He says that we must now have linguistic units. Provincial Congress Committee of Gujarat, Provincial Congress Committee of Andhra, of Tamil Nadu, etc., etc. Like that, he divided it up. Because essentially the idea was, and that languages matter, and that is how it should be done. So linguistic provinces was not opposed either by the national movement or by Nehru. But at the point of independence, look at the situation at that point of time, when the fear of balkanization was so huge, the British almost were pushing us in that direction. 500
princely states,
hundreds of them,
and a speedy exit.
That's right, and everybody trying to grab the old princes, thinking now is the opportunity to become real king and all that. With in Telangana, in Kashmir, in all Junagadh, etc. In that situation, for Nehru, the unity of the center or the power of the center seemed very important. But as you correctly said, that he was not something who had his eyes closed. As the situation evolved, it is under him that the strategy of the integration of the states, I'm forgetting the word, they go through this whole process of deciding how the states will be done. I'm forgetting the reorganization of the states. That happens under Nehru itself.
Of course, totally he steers that process and he completely embraces it. So thank you so much for doing this, and I'm going to ask you a difficult thing. Why don't you read out either your favorite bit from the book or your favorite Nehru quote? You probably remember it at the back of your hand. But I don't give you your book to support you.
I'll have to look for it, because I'm not familiar with the book. I'm familiar with my manuscript.
More with Nehru and your manuscript.
No, yeah.
And your memory.
But my favorite, I just randomly opened it. Hearing the communalists talk of Hindu Rashtra in Delhi and threatened the Muslims to vacate their houses for the incoming refugees and asking them to go to Pakistan, Nehru warned, if any person raises his hand against another person on basis of religion, all the resources at the command of the government will be used to put him down with an iron hand. So, on the one hand, he uses state power. After all, he bans the RSS. He and Patel, they put 25,000 of them in jail. On the other, Nehru argued again that it is not enough just to put them in jail, etc. He says we must fight them ideologically. He says that just putting that he says communalism is a fascist force. To resist them, you have to use state power. You have to win elections, you have to use state power. But it is not enough. He says that people who are motivated by an ideology can be fought only by a superior ideology. Because these are fanatics. They believe in what they're doing. So only way you can deal with them in the long run, as a democrat again, is not to put them in prison, but to present to them a superior ideology. And the superior ideology that he wanted to present to the people was a humane, civic nationalism, as opposed to an alpha male, toxic, hate-filled nationalism that they were providing. And I thought that was Nehru's major contribution.
And there's no better note than to end this conversation. Thank you for joining us at The Wire, and thank you for writing this book.
Thank you so much, Seema. It was a pleasure.